For the last decade, SpaceX's Starship and NASA's SLS have been in an unofficial race to put humans back on the moon and onwards towards Mars. Both systems have shown stellar capabilities over the years in a battle of experience versus youth. But it appears NASA's taken the lead against SpaceX with the recent launch of the SLS. But the question still remains: is one test launch enough to put SLS on top? And will Starship ever catch up? Well, we've got that covered in today's video as we take a look at SLS versus Starship. SLS takes the lead from Starship. The entire world has been watching Starship face off against SLS in development over the last few years, and while most people are either on Team NASA or Team SpaceX, it's high time we clear up one very important fact. NASA and SpaceX are not competitors. Both bodies have actually collaborated on more than one mission, with NASA being SpaceX's biggest supporter, not to mention their biggest customer. NASA remains a government agency with near unlimited funding and tight restrictions, while SpaceX is a private company with ambitious goals to put the first humans on Mars. With that said, both companies have been racing against the clock to achieve the same goal. So, in our book, the race is on, and NASA's SLS appears to be taking the lead. After over a decade of development and nearly $12 billion in developmental cost, NASA's SLS finally achieved a successful test launch in November of 2022. The powerful rocket took off from the Kennedy Space Center in the early hours of the morning, soaring into the Florida sky on the long-awaited Artemis 1 mission. The initial assessment statement released by NASA reveals that the rocket performed exceptionally well, meeting and even exceeding expectations. Carrying the Orion spacecraft on a test journey beyond the moon and back, the successful launch of SLS puts into motion the first phase of the Artemis mission, putting us on par with returning humans to the lunar surface after over 50 years. Producing over 8.8 million pounds of thrust, SLS became the most powerful rocket ever launched, surpassing the Saturn V rocket with more than 15% more thrust power. After liftoff from the Kennedy Space Center, the rocket was able to travel over 27 miles above the ground, reaching speeds of over 4,000 miles per hour within just 2 minutes into its launch, after which the boosters detached. NASA recorded no issues with the rocket's booster subsystems, thrust vector control systems, or avionics. The 4 powerful RS-25 engines also performed as anticipated, burning through the 735,000 gallons of propellant in the rocket's core stage. SLS successfully delivered the Orion capsule just under 3 miles of the projected altitude of about 15,000 miles, reaching top speeds of approximately 17,000 miles per hour. The Orion capsule then proceeded to unfold its solar arrays, which provided the power to the capsule's onboard systems before beginning its journey to the moon. A single RL-10 engine, which has served NASA for over 50 years, powering missions in and outside the solar system, was used to propel the capsule toward the moon. According to NASA, not only did the RL-10 engine perform flawlessly, but it also set a record for the longest single-duration burn for any rocket engine firing over 18 hours straight. SLS's performance was near perfect, with NASA revealing the entire mission was off by less than 0.3%. The success of the Artemis 1 mission was complete with the Orion capsule completing its 25-day orbit around the moon, after which it successfully splashed down in the Pacific Ocean off Baja, California. NASA was able to demonstrate that the capsule was not just capable of supporting astronauts, but could handle the rigors of re-entry. The heat shield on the capsule was able to survive the intense temperatures of up to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit experienced during re-entry at speeds of up to 25,000 miles per hour. The capsule also maintained a stable temperature within the cabin, as the temperature only rose from 64 to 71 degrees Fahrenheit, while the outside increased 500 times more. Regardless of the success of the SLS launch, the entire launch sequence almost didn't happen, as there were several issues in the moments leading up to the launch. During the fueling process of the rocket's upper stage, about 3 hours to launch, there was a minor leak detected on the launch tower. The leak was traced to have originated from a faulty liquid hydrogen replenishment valve, but was quickly determined to be a minor issue and was quickly replaced in less than an hour. Another subsequent issue emerged with an unresponsive Ethernet switch, this time not on the rocket itself, but on the U.S. Space Force Eastern Range. This prompted a no-go on the launch sequence until a replacement for the switch was found and properly fixed. These issues could have easily halted the entire launch or caused a cancellation, which might have pushed the launch date further down the line. SpaceX has been building momentum for years, hopefully leading up to an orbital test flight of Starship sometime in the future. So far, we've received regular updates from SpaceX's founder and CEO Elon Musk regarding the current state of Starship and how far they've come in terms of a possible test launch date. Musk recently tweeted on January 7th on a possible February or March launch date for Starship being likely. The planned orbital test will involve the current prototype of Starship, called Ship-24, as well as the Super Heavy prototype called Booster 7. Both prototypes have been undergoing several tests over at the Starbase facility in Boca Chica, Texas. Although things might look promising, SpaceX still has a ways to go before Starship will be ready for any kind of orbital flight test. For instance, both Ship-24 and Booster 7 have reportedly performed static fire tests, but these tests only do so much. The static fire test for Ship-24 reportedly ignited all 6 Raptor engines simultaneously while anchored to the ground. Booster 7, on the other hand, only successfully engaged 14 out of its 33 engines during its static fire test. There's still work to be done before all 33 engines on the Super Heavy are mission-ready to undergo any orbital flights. While the Super Heavy still has a ways to go, Starship has demonstrated the capabilities of its Raptor engines in a previous orbital test flight back in May of 2021. On that day, Starship was able to successfully engage its then 3-engined prototype called SN-15. The prototype was able to lift off to about 6.2 miles into the Texas atmosphere, successfully performing several planned maneuvers before returning for a smooth landing at Starbase 6 minutes after liftoff. But so far, only the upper Starship stage has successfully performed launches, with the booster stage still yet to lift off the ground in any capacity. The planned orbital flight for Ship-24 and Booster 7 will be the first time both the Starship and Super Heavy booster stages have flown together. Both SLS and Starship have seen considerable delays in launches over the last few years, with the 2020 global shutdown causing industry-wide delays to both NASA and SpaceX missions. For SLS, the recent successful launch of the Artemis 1 mission was actually the 3rd attempt in the last year alone. An initial launch attempt was planned for August of 2022, but was canceled due to problems with the cooling systems on one of the 4 main engines on the rocket. A second launch date was fixed for September, but also had to be canceled due to a hydrogen leak detected during the rocket's fueling stage. Any further launches were put on indefinite hold after Hurricane Ian slammed through the Florida coastline, causing SLS to be under the assembly building of the Kennedy Space Center for much of late September. The launch date still had to be pushed further after Hurricane Nicole, which produced dangerously high winds, caused damage to the outer section of the Orion capsule. SpaceX's Starship has also seen delays of its own, but these have been anticipated as the rocket is still well within its developmental stages and the company is basically learning as they go. While NASA has successfully proven that experience trumps youth in the orbital test category, there's still a long way to go before crewed missions are possible for both rockets. SLS clearly has the upper hand with more thrust power, size, and capacity compared to Starship. But there is still one aspect that Starship trumps SLS. While each SLS booster stage is disposable after each mission, Starship is gearing up to be a completely reusable rocket, which would not only mean less time lag between missions, but significantly lesser cost. Current estimates have it that each SLS launch mission will cost upwards of $2 billion. But if Starship is successful, each launch would be less than $100 million. Who do you think will put humans back on the moon first? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.